Back in our capital, the parties squared off in question time for the first time this year. After the tragic bushfires over summer and the vitriolic personal attacks on Scott Morrison, as well as the hysterical political posturing that blamed the bushfires on climate policies, it was always going to be a testing session for the government. The opposition leader started off by accusing the Prime Minister of ignoring Labor's suggestions.
Why did the Prime Minister summarily dismiss Labor's constructive proposals by rejecting a national approach to the crisis, saying COAG might meet later, quote, should the need arise?
The government's response to the national bushfire emergency over this black summer has been, Mr Speaker, unprecedented. Unprecedented.
Labor kept on bushfires, attacking Scott Morrison over the social media video promoting his bushfire response, arguing it was party political, and things all got a little heated.
Prime Minister can pause for a second. I mean, I know it's the start of a new year and it's the first question time, but members won't have forgotten the number of times I've said it's important for me to hear the question and the answer.
Mr Speaker, the only people trying to politicise the response to the bushfire crisis is the Leader of the Opposition.
Now, she styles herself as a centrist, but obviously Green Left is the independent Zali Steggall, and she chimed in with Labor.
Will you honour the sacrifice of all those impacted during this bushfire crisis by showing bipartisan support for effective, long-term plans to lower our emissions, mitigate the worst of climate change and, united, keep Australians safe?
Emissions reduction is important and we're acting on that reduction, but I can tell you also resilience to climate is also important, and hazard reduction is important, if not more important, than emissions reduction when it comes to protecting people from fire and hotter, drier, longer summers in the future.
So all in all, not much we haven't heard before. The opposition moved on to the sports rorts as well, and then they tried to censure the Prime Minister in a catch-all motion about bushfires and sports rorts. But it all fizzled, really, as the government used its numbers to shut down debate. All a bit pedestrian, really, not the start Labor would have hoped for. They had their win, of course, back on Sunday when Bridget Mckenzie was forced to resign, but that's taken the sting out of the sports rorts issue, at least until the Senate inquiry, which was approved today, gets digging away into the details. And on the bushfires and climate, it looks like another case of Labor believing its own publicity, being sucked in by the shrillness of Twitter and the ABC and other Green Left media. Mainstream Australians know the fires weren't the work of climate change. Horrible as they were, they know we've seen worse. And they also know that Prime Ministers don't lead bushfire responses. That comes from the state authorities, of course. So what's excited the press gallery and the ABC over summer won't float in the main arena now that things are back to normal. There'll be some tensions in this area, of course, especially among coalition bedwetters. But away from the hysteria, the facts all line up for the government when you have this debate. There's some age-old advice for Labor that they should perhaps take heed of about attacking governments where there might be real vulnerability. And to borrow a phrase, that's the economy, stupid.